I was born on January 9th, 1992, to the sounds of Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl playing on the radio. Even though I wasn't endowed with the brown eyes that Morrison was singing about, I was left with the music. Everyone loves music, and everyone's taste in music changes throughout the course of their lives. It's only natural. Our tastes evolve, as does our taste in music. Let me take you on a tour of the music that has shaped my life. This is My Life in a Song. My parents grew up in the 60s and 70s, a hot time for rock and roll. For my dad, rock and roll was listening to the Rolling Stones. While across town, my mom sat in her room listening to some of the great singer-songwriters of her day, Don McLean, James Taylor, and her favorite, John Denver. By the time my parents met, they shared their love for music in holy matrimony, dancing to John Denver's Perhaps Love on their wedding day. If the 60s and 70s was a hot time for rock and roll, then the 90s were a hot time for country music. My mom was always tuned into the country music station when we were in the car. My favorite song to sing along to was George Strait's Check Yes or No. It's funny to look back and picture my 3-year-old self sitting in my car seat, wearing my little glasses, and singing along to the country music radio. But that was me. At least until boy bands anyway. It's tearing up my heart when I'm with you. It was the year 2000, Synergy Field, NSYNC, No Strings Attached World Tour, and that was my first concert. I had fallen hook, line, and sinker for the boy bands of the day, and the hook was deep. I loved them all, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys. I couldn't get enough of those guys. It sounds kind of lame, but I was only 8, and you really had no control over what you like at that age. You only like what's in front of you. And boy bands were everywhere. But a change was coming. I have to thank my father for a lot of my musical taste. The Stones, CCR, George Thorogood, Johnny Cash, but most importantly, the Rat Pack. The Rat Pack were a group of outlaw Las Vegas lounge singers made up of Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. They were not exactly jazz or blues singers as much as they were the pop music of their day. This music was just so different from anything else I'd ever heard, and no one else seemed to know that it existed. It was like my own little secret that I was saving just for me. High school was a hard time for me, as I'm sure it is hard for everyone. And I would not have made it without the help of my newfound friends, Green Day. This is my first introduction to rock music, particularly punk rock. It was angst, it was rejection, and it was liberating. It sounds cliche, but it is what every teenager goes through, and I finally had an outlet for those feelings. I'll forever be grateful not for just what Green Day did for me, but for rock music in general. It opened up a side of me that I've never known was there before. The greatest pleasures of my life had come from listening to and playing rock music. I started playing music seriously by the time I started college. Besides schoolwork, most of my college years up until now have been spent playing in different local bands. Where other outlets have failed me, playing music was a way to express myself creatively for the first time. Once I got the rock itch, I haven't been able to stop scratching. And as I itched, I found that my tastes have gotten more and more weird. The best example of the weird that I'm talking about is a band called Queens of the Stone Age. It's hard to describe what kind of music they play. The best adjectives I had to describe them are desert, stoner, hard rock. Discovering rock music saved my life, and Queens of the Stone Age made that life worth living. There is nothing more exciting to me than finding a new song or new band to get into. You never know where one song or one new band will lead you, the journey that they will take you on. Finding a hook or hearing a melody gives me a certain feeling of pleasure, and I would devour entire catalogs to chase that feeling again. I'm always on the lookout for a new sound to pique my interest, so the only question that remains is, what will I find next? Song credits: Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison, released on Bang Records in 1967. Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones, released on Decca Records in 1969. Check Yes or No by George Strait, released on MCA Records in 1995. Tearing Up My Heart by NSYNC, released on RCA Records in 1998. Me and My Shadow by Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr., released on Columbia Records in 1962. Jesus of Suburbia by Green Day, released on Reprise, Warner Brothers Records in 2004. My Generation by The Who, released on Brunswick Records in 1965. And Keep Your Eyes Peeled by Queens of the Stone Age, released on Matador Records in 2013.